Hello everybody and welcome to Going Off. This is the third and final week of Kaldhiem previews. I am Chris.
I'm Hallie.
I am Jordan, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Let's dive in. Hallie, why don't you kick us off?
Our first card is a really exciting card for Constructed. It's Doomscar, which is a brand new board wipe. It is a 5-mana sorcery, 3 white, destroy all creatures, but you can foretell it for 1 white, so you get to pay that 3 white in installments.
Easily the most metal name in the set.
Doomscar. Yeah, very impressive in a set full of metal card names to find the most metal.
I am so excited for this card. A 3-mana Wrath, because let's be real, that's how this is mostly going to get used, is as part of a foretell board. It's going to be a 3-mana Wrath.
Any control deck loves this card because one of the problems control has is if there is a super fast aggro deck in the format, then by the time you are wrathing on turn 4 or 5, you're already at 5 life. This lets you wrath on turn 3 and just buys you at least a couple more turns as aggro has to get their feet back under them.
Or on turn 5 or turn 6, you could wrath them for 3 mana and hold up a counterspell for their next play.
Doomscar is very good.
I don't know whether or not it is a mistake. That's all I'm going to say.
To stop picking at the Doomscar, we've got a new card in the form of another red god. Burgi, or Burgi, or Burgai, or I don't even know how to pronounce it. God of Tales is yet another dual-sided god. We've got another modal double-face card here. Its flip side being Harnfell, Horn of Abundance. On the front, it's a legendary creature god for 2 and a red, for 3/3. Each time you cast a spell, add 1 red mana. You don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So you've already got a little bit of extra mana that you can just build up over time, which will be very helpful for the second line of text, which is you can boast your creatures up to 2 times each turn. The backside of Burgi is, as I mentioned, Harnfell, Horn of Abundance, which is a legendary artifact for 4 and a red. Discard a card. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn.
Both sides of this card are basically, hi, Modern Storm, would you like to be better?
I just love how many good red creatures we're getting in this set. We've gotten a lot of really good red aggressive creatures and creatures for, big red or big mana strategies, and I'm just very happy about that.
Moving away from the red god, we have Savela, the Ice Shaper, who is a legendary snow creature troll warrior for 1 red-green. It is 2/4, and it makes manaliths. 3 and tap it. Create a colorless snow artifact token named Icy Manalith. With tap, add 1 mana of any color. And then 6 red-green tap. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Love a card that has synergy with itself for sure. And, going back to Burgi, it's really interesting that we're seeing so many cards that make mana in this set. Because we have Burgi, which adds red mana every time you cast a spell. We have this card that's making manaliths. On last episode, we talked about Goldspan Dragon that makes treasures, that makes your treasures tap for extra mana. We're just getting so much mana in this set. And there's obviously no shortage of things you can do with all your mana in a lot of the current Magic sets, but it'll be interesting to see where we go from here and what else we can use our mana on. Next up, we have Dream Devourer, which is a demon cleric for 1 and a black. Each non-land card in your hand without foretell has foretell. Its foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2, and whenever you foretell a cost, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Here's the question of the day. What card without foretell do you want to foretell with this card?
We already have Doomscar, but things like Wrath of God immediately popped into my head.
It's going to foretell a bunch of Eldrazi.
That seems on brand for you. I'm thinking about foretelling like Planeswalkers mostly, which I guess is on brand for me.
This is also kind of a nifty way to protect your hand against discard spells, just because if you know they're playing Thoughtseize and stuff, the moment you get to turn 2, you can just start hiding the most important parts of your hand without them really having a way to interact with it.
It's funny that you mentioned Thoughtseize and protecting your hand, because up next, we've got Skull Raid. So this is 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. But if fewer than 2 cards were discarded this way, you draw cards equal to the difference. And you don't have to wait for 4 mana to cast this, because it of course has foretell.
This is basically 1 extra mana for a Mind Rot without any downside.
I kind of like it. If you are foretelling this, then odds are you're casting it a little later in the game. Your opponent may have fewer cards in hand, so maybe you're just taking 1 card away from them, but then you get to draw a card, and late in the game, that feels very good.
I really love this card in Limited. I think it's going to fit nicely into a foretell deck.
Yeah, I don't really see this having much of a home in like too many constructed formats, just because even though it is nice and never really dead, 4 mana for discard 2 is kind of a lot. It might sneak into standard on the fringes, but I'm not sure about that. But like this sort of thing is pretty good in Commander and Limited, like Jordan was saying, just because it is never dead. It's always a good top deck, really no matter where you are in the game. Skull Raid's kind of a nifty little uncommon. Moving on, we have Dragonkin Berserker, another low-costed creature at 1 and a red for a 2/2 first striker. Boast abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control, and it itself has a boast ability for 4 and a red, spit out a 5/5 dragon with flying. This is another card that synergizes with itself. As you start making more dragons, it becomes easier to make those dragons every turn. Just play this in a deck with Goldspan Dragon and whatever other dragons you can find in Standard, and the moment it comes down, you could start spitting out dragons for like 2 or 3 mana.
Yeah, it's rare that red gets really good early game creatures that are also good in the late game, and I feel like this is a really great example of that. Speaking of cards that have the potential to overperform, we have Finn the Fangbearer, which is a creature with Death Touch, but it says whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters.
That's right, everybody. Poison's back on 1 card in the set.
This hurts me deeply to see poison back on a one-off card in a set.
So I did a quick search on creatures in Standard that have Death Touch. There's Questing Beast. That's a pretty big one in the same color as this card. So Questing Beast can now...
God.
Questing Beast can now give your opponent poison counters. So yeah, there are a bunch of creatures with Death Touch in Standard right now. There's Thieves Guild Enforcer, which sees a lot of play in Rogues. There's Nighthawk Scavenger, which has seen a little bit of play.
This card gives me fear for the future, because I feel like there's probably some Death Touch cards coming down the line that are going to make me weep when paired with Finn the Fangbearer.
1, this is going to be a hilarious Commander, or just in Commander in the 99. 2, this is going to absolutely be at least a fringe Standard deck that is going to cause some people to groan when they come up against it.
Let's keep it going with Maja, Brettigard Protector, for a very expensive legendary creature of 2 green, white for a 2/3. But it makes sense, it is an uncommon. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. So it's a lord for everything. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 white human warrior creature token. Which of course means create a 2/2 white human warrior creature token, because every other creature you have gets +1/+1.
This is the card they forgot to put in Zendikar.
Yeah, this is pseudo landfall.
It straight up is landfall, it just doesn't have landfall printed on it.
It is a lot of mana for what it is, but we have so many ways to put additional lands into play between Fabled Passage and Cultivate. There are a lot of ways to put lands into play these days, so I think this card is going to do quite a bit.
I like this card a lot. I just worry that it's still a 2/3.
Yeah.
That doesn't buff itself with its own ability. And there's a lot of removal in this set that hits for precisely 3 damage.
Where I'm thinking for it in Commander is like, this is the more fair version of something like Reese, where everybody is scared of Reese and it just spits out tokens. This also spits out tokens, but it takes longer to come down, and it kind of has the same strategy, but like I said, in a more fair feeling way. And if you're against Maja and they have spit out a bunch of creatures, you can then cast a card like Blood on the Snow, which is a snow sorcery for 4 black. Choose 1, destroy all creatures or destroy all planeswalkers. Then return a creature or planeswalker card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of snow mana spent to cast this spell. So this is like the black version of Time Swipe.
It's really interesting to think about this card in the context of the set, because it seems really powerful in and of itself. We were talking about Doomscar earlier and how great it is to have a 3-mana Wrath. And so I guess I'm just curious what incentives we have to play the 6-mana Wrath when you'd have to really build a specific deck around it.
Yeah, where I see this kind of fitting into Standard is this is a less immediately game-ending version of something like Command the Dreadhorde, which is the same mana slot. Instead of just getting things back from the graveyard, which was usually enough to just end the game, it's I'm going to clear the board and I'm going to be the only one with something.
Moving on, we have Orvar the All Form, which is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, you create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. And when a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, Orvar, create a token that's a copy of target permanent.
This card does a lot of things, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around all the things it can do.
Yeah, that's where I was too.
Yeah, smarter people than me are going to figure out how to break this card.
The first ability, where you cast instant sorcery, you can only copy things that you control. The discard ability, you can copy your opponent's things. But you can't really plan for the second ability going into a game. That's just kind of incidental upside to protect you from discard.
It's still good incidental upside, though.
Oh yeah, because even if they turn one Thoughtseize, you get that out of your hand. It's target permanent, it's not target non-land permanent, so you can just ramp. You get their land.
This also plays very nicely into the flicker sub-theme that we've talked about in the previous episodes, where you flickering your own creatures with instant or sorcery spells, and then just getting more of them.
Imagine Ephemerate with this card.
Yeah, that idea is haunting to me. Much like this card, Haunting Voyage. For 4 black, it's a sorcery. Choose a creature type. Return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If the spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. So, it's an expensive reanimation spell. 6 mana to get 2 creature cards of a specific type, which matters a lot less in Kaldhiem, where half of them are changelings, so you can play around with that quite a bit. And the foretell cost is actually more expensive than the usual cost, but the effect is so much stronger.
Yeah, it's weird how this works, because the front side of it, or the front part of it, where it's just 4 black, you're kind of wanting to play that where you're getting an upside on the mana, so you're returning 2 big giants or something. The foretell side is what you want to play if you're playing greenback elves and just get back 51 mana cards, sort of thing. That covers all of the big highlights that we wanted to hit on. What are your overall thoughts on Kaldhiem now that we've seen the whole set?
Set looks rad. I am excited to play a lot of it on Arena and do my, pre-release from home with a sealed event and see what kind of silliness comes out of it. And I'm really excited to see what this does to Eternal formats. There's a lot of powerful cards with a lot of great flavor and a lot of support for archetypes that haven't really seen that support in a little bit.
I'm really keen on it too. I am also really excited to draft it. I haven't drafted in a little while, so I'm looking forward to drafting a lot of it on Arena. And I've been playing a lot of Standard recently, and there are some cards in this set that really seem like they're going to shake up Standard, whether it's Doomscar giving some control decks a shot in the arm, or some of the new aggressive creatures possibly making mono red more popular. So I'm really excited to just see what all the possibilities are for Standard.
Yeah, as far as overall Kaldhiem thoughts go, I like the set a lot. I think it has a bunch of interesting things that could make impacts in older formats. It's definitely going to have a big impact in Commander. I like the fact that they seem to be starting to be more willing to kind of branch outside of the set, include one-offs of mechanics without necessarily spelling out that mechanic, like we have the Landfall card and the Poison card from this set. I am unsure how I feel about snow. There's been a lot of discussion about snow and what it means in Magic.
It basically means that there is no reason not to play snow lands outside in terms of basics.
Playing snow, even if you don't have snow effects in your deck, especially in a competitive setting, will get you some amount of points as people have to try and play around cards you don't have in your deck. That has been our preview for Kaldhiem, our reactions to the cards. I think the set looks rad overall, but for now, I've been Chris.
I've been Hallie.
And I've been Jordan.
And you can order any of the cards that we've talked about and all of the rest of the cards from Kaldhiem on cardkingdom.com. Our pre-sale is up and live right now, and we'll see you next time.